Welcome to the Jerry Acuff Show. Today, our guest is someone who is unbelievably accomplished, and I had the pleasure of meeting him over the Christmas holidays when I was in Scottsdale, and it was just sort of an accidental meeting, but just meeting him, he really intrigued me with his expertise and his range, and so welcome to Dr. John Shufeldt. John is actually a medical doctor. He's an ER doctor, not only by training, but he still practices emergency medicine. He's a lawyer. He's got an MBA, and in his spare time, he's a pilot. He founded a company called NextCare in 1993, which is, what I would call a walk-in clinic. And he grew it to 60 clinics and over $100 million. And I will tell you why he grew it to 60 clinics and over $100 million is because the service at NextCare, which I had experienced 2 days before I met him, which was serendipitous to know that I was going to meet the founder of this company. But I actually had a fall and hurt my knee. And it was without question the finest walk-in clinic care I had ever had in my life. It was fast. There was unbelievable follow-up. There was unbelievable transparency. It was just incredible. And I know that John had a huge part in actually creating those standards of practice. He is, again, still practices ER medicine. In his spare time, he writes books. He's written books on leadership, and he's written books, 12 books, over 12 books by my count. One of the other things that really impressed me is he's the medical director of the Phoenix Police SWAT team. And he also writes, and if you do not subscribe to his blog, you should. He writes a terrific blog. So, John, welcome to the Jerry Acuff Show. We love talking to people who are incredibly accomplished across a broad range of things, and you certainly qualify in that degree. One of the things I read on your website, or maybe listened to, because the thing I loved about your website is, and people should go to your website, and we'll make sure you tell them how to do that at the end, is the videos that you have there, because they're really, really good. But you mentioned in there the concept that lifelong learning was important. When and how did you come to that conclusion?
I'm not sure. Well, first off, thanks for having me on your show. I'm definitely honored to be on. To answer your question, I'm not sure when I finally beamed up to that. I think I started realizing very young that, it's the old, I think Socrates, a wise man knows he knows nothing. And since I didn't consider myself very wise, I realized I probably knew less than nothing. And as I started finding my way through school, the more I learned, the more I realized that, holy cow, that he was right. And I made a vow to myself to go back to school and get some sort of formal education every 10 years, and in the intervening years to do the informal education, which is reading and classes and lectures and continuing legal and medical education sort of things.
So how has this devotion to lifelong learning been beneficial to you?
Well, I think the most first off, it's been a blast, and I've had a great time doing it. I grew up as a very average student, and I mean very average. Bottom half of my high school, and barely made it out of there. How I got into college, I have no idea. Other than that year, they decided to accept like 97% of the people that applied. Fortunately, and I'm not, and that's not an exaggeration, sadly. But in a business sense, it's allowed me to look at opportunities that are on the intersections of different disciplines. So, for example, law and medicine, or aviation and law, or aviation and medicine, things that you may not see otherwise, but for the knowledge gained, or maybe the perspective gained is a better way to say it.
Right.
I can think to myself, wow, that might be an interesting business idea that others may miss, and that's helped a lot.
Yeah, so it's actually the fact that you have this wide breadth of knowledge that enables you to find intersections other people wouldn't find.
I think so, and then once found, and many of them are totally ridiculous and they would never work, but some of them actually make some sense.
Right.
And those that make sense, I've been fortunate enough to explore a few of those, and it's worked.
Yeah, that's interesting. I have a very close friend who's the basketball coach at Virginia Tech who beat Duke last night. And so, but years ago when I met him 5 years ago, he had this calendar, and it was an 8.5 by 11 calendar. And on this calendar, he had these little boxes. And I said, well, what do these boxes mean? He had CTEW. He said, well, call one person every day, text one person every day, email one person every day, write one person every day. And I said, well, how do you decide who to call, text, email, or write? And he turned the page over, and there were 120 names on there. And so I remember saying to myself, there's got to be a technology way to do that a lot easier. And as I looked at this, I couldn't find anything. And so I developed an app, which I'm going to launch here in the next couple of weeks, called Really Linked, which is who do you really want to be linked to? I mean, I have 7,300 connections on LinkedIn, and the truth is they're all important, but there's probably 100 of them that I better stay in touch with or I'm going to lose influence. And so what I did was create this app where you could call them, text them, email them, or ask for a meeting and never leave that app. It would send you a reminder when you wanted to talk to them again, and it gave you a place for notes. So it's like a mini CRM for free.
Interesting.
So it was again a similar thing with you. It was me understanding technology, and then Buzz understanding the need to stay in touch with people in order to keep influence. So what made you go to medical school?
Since I was a little kid, and 4 or 5 years old, I realized I wanted to be a physician. And I always laugh because my intersections with both dentistry and medicine at an early age were not pleasant. The dentist used a foot cranked drill with no anesthesia, and it was like watching the Marathon Man with Dustin Hoffman get his teeth drilled going to the dentist. And when I was about 5 or 6 years old, my mom took me to our primary care doctor, and out of the blue she said, "John touches himself down there too much." And all of a sudden, my eyes got really big, and I'm like, oh, my God, my mother just outed me. And the Dr. Gene Henry looked at me and said, if you touch it again, I'll cut it off. And so that wasn't really my first engagement with medicine, and it was a little bit horrifying since I haven't touched it since. And but despite that, I wanted to go into medicine.
So what about being an entrepreneur? How did you decide to do that? Was that the NextCare thing?
No, I was an entrepreneur as a little kid. I made candles and carry them around the block and sold candles. Then when they didn't sell, I used the same molds and made chocolate. And people would say, "Well, God, this chocolate tastes a lot like wax." I'm like, "Oh, yeah," point taken. So that was a little kid. I'd always been very entrepreneurial. I used to go around the block and sell raffle tickets. I grew up boxing. And I sold raffle tickets to these boxing meets. It was North Austin Boys Club. And one day, I don't know why, I tucked my arm in my sleeve, so only my hand stuck out of my sleeve. And then my other arm looked normal. So when I knocked on their door, I'd sell these raffle tickets for this North Austin Boys Club boxing events. And I never said anything, but I think people looked at me and said, wow, this brave little kid has only one arm and he's still boxing. I think I'll buy some raffle tickets from him. And I'm not proud of that at all. It was when I was about 6 years old. But I do remember looking back thinking, that was actually kind of ingenious. It wasn't an overt lie, but you certainly gave the appearance that you were a one-armed boxer.
Right. So what led you to NextCare? Was it frustration with emergency medicine in a hospital, or?
No, it wasn't frustration. Two things. One, the thing I like best about emergency medicine, I just worked some shifts over the weekend, and on Sunday I had just multiple really critically ill patients. Just life and death stuff, and I really enjoy that level of intensity in medicine. And I'd always say you never wish anybody to be sick, but if they are sick, you want to be the one taking care of them, and that's me. But I saw emergency medicine going to a lot of kind of minor stuff, colds and flu and things like that. And I thought, man, I don't want to take care of these patients. I want to take care of the heart attacks and the gunshot wounds. So this was in 92, 93, and there weren't really any urgent cares out there yet in most parts of the U.S. So it was the fact that I wanted to take care of the sick people in the ED and not have the emergency department swamped with people who weren't all that ill. And then also I thought that someday insurance companies are going to wake up and say, why are we spending, 5x times an urgent care amount for people who really just need an urgent care or now just need telemedicine? It's kind of what got me on the road to NextCare. Gotcha.
So what inspired you to write Leadership You and Ingredients of Outliers? Because these are both books about personal achievement. What inspired you to write those, and what are some of the takeaways that you'd want to share with people about those books?
Well, Ingredients of Outliers was simply, it was a kind of a takeoff of Malcolm Gladwell's book Outliers, and it comes at it a little different way. But it's, over the years I met some really amazing people, and I started cataloging their traits and saying, what is it about this person that makes them super unique and very accomplished? And I cataloged them, and then I would write examples or stories of the people that I had met, and generally ways where I could have done better and didn't. That was Ingredients of Outliers. Leadership You was just, to be a leader, you first have to lead yourself, or no one's going to follow. And so what are the traits you need to have, in your quiver that you have mastered, where you can lead yourself and then eventually lead others.
So what are one or two of the things that people need to know to lead themselves? I mean, I think you're 1,000% right. I don't think you can lead others if you can't lead yourself. But I always say the key to all growth and development is self-awareness. It's really being aware of what you're good at and what you're not good at. But what are some of the things that people need to know in order to lead themselves better?
I think the first thing is, you said self-awareness. I probably would say, in that same vein, humility. Because if you're not humble and you think you have all the answers, you're almost by definition not self-aware, and then you're not open to change and failure and empathy. And I think empathy is right after humility is a close second. And then if I had to pick the top three, I would add perseverance. There's a great quote by Theodore Roosevelt, and and it basically says that the victory comes to those who toil, and even though they fall down a lot and fail, they get back up and push through. And so, if you have those three traits tied up, humility, empathy, and kindness goes along with empathy, of course, and then perseverance, I think there's little in the world you can't accomplish.
Right. My father wasn't as eloquent as Roosevelt, but he used to say to me all the time, he said, son, you better have a whole bunch of rubber in your butt. He said, because every time you hit that pavement, you better bounce back up pretty quickly. And you're going to hit it a bunch of times. And I just never forgotten that. And, I've come to the conclusion recently that very often we change or grow in phrases or in moments that have this incredible impact on us. A simple thing. I go back and think about, when I was offered a pro baseball offer from the Houston Astros in 1967, $20,000 would seem like a lot of money. And I remember being sort of intoxicated with how great I was as an athlete. And I remember meeting with my baseball coach, asking him what I should do. And I'll never forget, he said to me, look, man, you're a good hitter, but, other than that, you ain't that good. And you need to go and play football in college, and if you're still a good baseball player, you'll be fine. But, that moment changed my life. A very simple moment, because I could have signed with the Astros, and who knows what would have happened. I don't think I'd have made the big leagues. And I did have a lot of faith and trust in this guy. What's funny about this story is I called him like 10 years ago to thank him, because I said, I'm giving a lot of thought to this, and that thing that you told me in your biology lab that day, because he was at first a biology teacher, and he saw himself as a biology teacher, not just a baseball coach. I said, that advice you gave me changed my life in every way. He said, I don't remember what I told you.
Yeah, exactly.
But
it was
a moment that changed my life.
Yeah, I've had some of those things that seem inconsequential to others at the time, but however they do it, it rings true.
Yeah, it's 100% true. Now, how can people find ways to learn from you? Is most of it on your books and websites?
Yeah, I think so. The ingredients of Outliers and leadership use, certainly. We're having a new one's just about to come out called Navigating the U Economy, which is basically, kind of getting people excited to find multiple sources, find and develop multiple sources of income for themselves. I think there are very many people out there who are very fragile financially, and that if they lose their job or the industry shifts, they're only a few paychecks away from a real emergency. So I always encourage people to have a couple backup plans. And, one of the things that's always pushed me to look at other opportunities and other career choices was having these contingency plans. So, for example, I fly probably 3 or 4 days a week to and from business. And, as you fly or when you fly, you always think of backups. If the engine quits here, where am I going? What's my emergency procedures? What things do I have to have memorized? And what things can I pick up the book and look at quickly? And so I think if you approach life like this, where you say, okay, I'm going to be this, but gosh, what happens if I, even in emergency medicine, if you have a bad back injury or you get hurt doing something, you better have a backup plan, because if you can't practice, if you can't intubate somebody and you can't, do the procedures necessary, you can't practice.
Right.
And if that's the case, people are like, well, gosh, now what am I going to do?
Yeah.
So I don't think people think like that, and I'm a born optimist. I'm about as far from Chicken Little as you can get. But I do think the what ifs a lot, because medicine certainly trained me to do that. Flying certainly trained me to do that. Okay, if I give this medication to this patient and they stop breathing, do I have stuff to manage their airway? No. Okay, let me get all this stuff out.
Right.
I think through a lot of things like that just in daily living.
Yeah, I tell people all the time that I think the preparation is one of the largest causes of failure, is a lack of preparation.
Sure.
Just not being prepared for what's going to happen, which is sort of your contingency plan. I've written 3 books on relationship building. How do you build valuable business relationships? How important are relationships to an entrepreneur?
Well, I think that I just finished a book called The Hitmakers, and it was a great book. And at the end of it, the take-home point of The Hitmakers was really your network determines your altitude in some respects. And they give a lot of different examples, but at the end of the day, it was your network. And he went through different people who may have never been discovered but for having an amazing network, which they developed. That literally did not dawn on me until a few years ago, when, interestingly enough, I watched my son develop a network when he's a fighter pilot. And a lot of it was he knew people who were fighter pilots. He learned a lot from them, learned what to look for, where to go, how to apply, all these things that never dawned on me growing up, that I did not develop a network like he did. And now he's got a great network of people for which he would do anything, and consequently would do anything for him. So I learned that kind of late in life. So another, I guess, lesson is, work on developing your network. Find out what you can do to help other people, and maybe someday they can help you out if you need it. Yeah,
I love that. That sort of quote on the Hitmaker, that your network determines your altitude. A lot of people don't know the reason why. One of the reasons, certainly not the only reason, one of the reasons why Bill Gates is so wealthy is because of his mother.
Yeah, absolutely. She was on the school board with the computer science room.
Yeah, exactly.
At their middle school.
And basically put the two together. And without that, he could have been doing a podcast in Dallas, Texas.
And talking to me. Amen.
Exactly. So how do you decide which goals to pursue with all of your sort of many things that you have churning in your life?
I think I look for the goals that either produce the most joy to me personally, or the ones where I can move the needle the most. So, for example, I'm involved in some Native American healthcare projects now, and my takeaway, or what I've been telling people, which is my takeaway, is if I can make an impact and make a difference, I am all in. I'll never quit. But today I stop being able to make a difference. If somehow that's thwarted, not a problem. But then I don't want to be involved. It's not money driven. It's difference driven. And if I can feel like I can impact the care of some of the Native American folks who have had candidly pretty poor health care over the years, count me in. I mean, I'll go to the wall.
So I feel the same way, and I do a lot of charitable work, but I try and limit the charitable work that I do and my wife does, because we both are very philanthropic, to things that we know make a difference. So we're, for example, on the board of the College Orientation Workshop, which helps underperforming but talented African American and Latinos understand their greatness. And we bring them to VMI every summer, put them through a 30-day rigorous program, and we change probably two-thirds of their lives.
That's pretty cool.
And it's a wonderful board to be on. How about being convincing and persuasive? Where does that rank in your sort of skill set as an entrepreneur?
Well, that's a great question. I always tell a friend of mine, I met some people who could sell ice to Eskimos, and he's a friend of mine, Glenn. I said, you cannot sell water to a man on fire. And I'm somewhere between those two. I think if you sincerely believe it and are honest and true, then that's convincing enough. I would have a very hard time being convincing of something that I did not affirmatively believe. And so I think people's energy and their excitement's contagious. And so if I approach something that I feel energetic about and a lot of excitement towards and know it's make a difference, I can be very convincing because it's not me being convincing, it's just me being direct and honest. Trying to sell somebody something that I don't believe in, I would suck at it.
Yeah, I quit my first sales job because I thought they were trying to get me to pressure people into buying tea that didn't need tea. And it was only when I got a new definition of selling that I said I could do that, because people hate to be sold, but they love to buy. But the other thing, Zig Ziglar said in one of his books, which I have never forgotten, selling is a transference of feeling, and you cannot transfer a feeling you don't have.
That's great.
And I think, it's exactly what you said. If I believe in it, I don't even feel like I'm selling it. I'm just telling you about it, and I'm passionate about it. And if you want to buy, great. If you don't want to buy, that's great too. I don't care.
Exactly. Yeah.
I wrote in my book, the less you care about the sale, the more you sell. What you have to care about is, do you believe in the product? Do you know how to ask the right questions to find out whether these attributes might be important to the person you're talking to? It's not about how can I sell you, how can I manipulate this conversation to get you to buy something that may or may not be in your best interest.
Yeah, I totally agree. If I'm passionate about it, it's not selling, it's just me educating people.
Yeah. So what are you looking to do next?
I always want to change the world. I mean, I really want to improve healthcare up on Indian reservations. And so I'm involved in a project in San Carlos, Arizona, and then in the Great Plains tribal areas, which is South Dakota and Nebraska. And
wow.
I'm super passionate about it and very excited.
Wow. Well, you're far more noble than I am. I have my ideas about the things that I want to change. I think the biggest problem America has is there's not enough understanding. We're far too quick to, if your opinion is different than mine, then there's something wrong with you. And and that just drives me nuts. I think race relations is a huge issue I'd like to tackle, but I don't know how to go about tackling it. I sincerely believe that, if you have a lot of black friends and you're white, pretty soon you'll realize that they're just like you are, and they got people in their family that are, jerks, and they got wonderful people in their family and everything in between. And if you're a black person, you got a lot of white friends, you'll find out exactly the same thing. But we, for some reason, we've allowed our society to polarize too much for itself. John, thanks so much. Go ahead.
I was going to say, a quick perspective on that. So I talk about healthcare disparity a lot. At the end of the day, you and I share, and and we don't really look much alike. You and I share about 99% of our genetic material, as would myself, an African American, or somebody who was born in Iraq. And so between genetics and the birth lottery, we're really pretty much all clones of each other. So we're all really twins.
Right.
And so from my perspective, how can you ever discriminate against somebody about something for which they have no control, color of their skin,
right,
where they were born, what
yeah.
their religion is? It makes absolutely no logical sense to me.
No,
and
it
usually
doesn't.
I think it's just a matter of being ill-informed. The folks who still find ways to discriminate against other people, there's no basis for it that's logical.
Well, I applaud all the things that you're doing to change the world. Let me sort of summarize the things that I took away from here, because I took almost a page of notes. It's not a bad idea to start being an entrepreneur as a kid. Because I really do think, and I see this in my own son who's 17, he really does like to find ways to sell stuff, and I just don't have any concern about whether he'll be successful or not. The other thing that you said, John, that I think is really powerful is learn what other successful people do, and you talked about that's what you did in your book. Because to me, success is nothing but a set of skills. There's a day you couldn't tie your shoe and somebody taught you. There's a day you couldn't ride a bike and somebody taught you. And if I want to learn something, there's somebody who can teach me. You have to lead yourself if you're going to be successful, because if you can't lead yourself, you can't lead anybody else. I loved what you had to say about humility in addition to self-awareness and change and failure and empathy and perseverance, because Og Mandino in his book The Greatest Salesman in the World said, I will persist until I succeed. Oliver Goldsmith said, failure means nothing if success eventually comes, but most people quit right before they get ready to be successful. You talked about contingency plans and how essential they are, and I think that is so related to, preparation is key. And I think if people will have contingency plans and will do a better job of preparing, they'll have far more success. Your quote from the Hitmakers, your network determines your altitude, is absolutely terrific. And finally, I just applaud your giving spirit. I believe there's laws of the universe, and I believe there's laws of the universe that don't change. One of the laws of the universe that I think is 100% true is that when you give, you get. Now, if you're trying to give to get, that's manipulation. But if you're giving and you're a giver, it'll come back to you a million times in a million different ways. And it may not be financial at all. It might be relational. It could be anything. But when you're at a point in your life where you can produce, when you can make your decisions about your goals based on what produces the most joy, and if you can get involved and you can make a difference and you'll never quit, then you're in a pretty good place, and you're a hell of a role model. So I thank you for having taken the time to be on the Jerry Acuff Show. And I would say to anybody who's watching this show, y'all know what my final 2 words are going to be, but if you want to model for being incredible, John Shufeldt is it. So go on his website. What's your website, John?
John Shufeldt. It's pretty unique. JohnShufeldt.com.
JohnShufeldt.com. And it's spelled SHUFELDT.
Correct.
Is that correct? Go to JohnShufeldt.com, and I promise you will learn something that'll make you a better human being. And until the next episode, which will be Dr. Kevin Elko, who is the motivational force behind the University of Alabama and the Philadelphia Eagles, and this year wasn't a bad place for him to be. And he's a brilliant, brilliant guy. Until then, be incredible.
Listening to RNCN, the digital destination for premium talk radio.